It's time for God Almighty to inhabit the praises of His people. Adon Praise 2018 brings you a dynamic assembly of the finest praise and worship leaders. Let's join hearts with one accord to glorify the Lord of hosts. The gateway of heaven will open as Dinah Hamilton, Sax Bossa, Willie and Mike, Pastor Kwame Manukwe and Kweku Jesse usher us to the heavenly throne room. The dew of heaven will fall on the ministration of Elder Mreku and Eben to shatter all yokes to declare victory.
There is power in your name.
The date is Friday, 31st August 2018, and the venue is Paris Dome, Jolu Junction. Join the conversation. Hashtag Adon Praise 18. Adon Praise 2018 is brought to you by Vodafone. The future is exciting. Ready? And Yield Money Plus, Fasusu Talk. Sponsors, DBS Roofing Sheet, Roof Papa Fee, Belacqua, Proudly Ghanaian, Dr. Caesar Lina Energy Drink, Adabrejo, Away, Amanak Real Estate. You dream it, we build it. Franco Traded Enterprise, Phone Papa Fee, Vitamilk, a meal on its own. Classic No Mosquito Coil and Spray, Wubede Feely, Escort Security Services. Think safety, choose Escort Security. Goldman Capital, financial support, solid as gold. Fresh Lady, Yopo Fresh. Araba Basin Pills, Maya Obasima, Papa's Pizza. Taste it, love it. Trelidor, Africa's strongest burglar proofing, securing your blessings. Media partners, Precious TV, Footprint TV, Sweet Melodies FM, Sunny FM, Deal TV, and powered by the Multimedia Group Limited. Adom 106.3 FM. Yeah, tough. Adom Praise 2018. Yeah, baby. This has given you victory.
And you are live on Joy 99.7 FM. This is Ghana Connect. My name is Evans Mensah. Now, a week ago, President Akufo-Addo dropped the biggest hint yet of government's plans to tax the church. Now, listen to how the president justified what is set to become the new reality when the 2019 budget is read.
Members of Senate, these are interesting times for all of us in our country, as we grapple with the task of building a happy and prosperous nation. It could not be lost on anyone that there are increasing calls for churches to be taxed. And it is not difficult to see what is driving these calls. For years, the churches were seen as leading the drive for development. They built and ran schools and hospitals. They led the campaign for good sanitation. Cleanliness was next to godliness. They preached and practiced. There were church services where worshippers sang to their heart's content, but there was no question of keeping whole communities awake night after night. Nor were there churches that were sources of nuisance. The priests in churches, leaders led their lives that the average person could identify with. I am not getting into the merits and demerits of the prosperity gospel that appears to be the main theme for many of our present-day churches. The good Lord knows I preach prosperity myself, and I do not want this country and its people to be poor, and I am very much for wealth creation. But the difficult truth is that once you get into the wealth and prosperity sphere, you necessarily slip into the tax and accounting language. The public looks on as priests compete to show who is the more powerful and who is the richer. The public looks on as some of the churches appear to forget about the poor and the vulnerable in our society and concentrate on being outrageous. It is not surprising that there are calls for taxes to be imposed on church incomes. When you step out of the charity sphere, out of education, and out of healthcare, you're putting yourself in the line of the taxman.
So that is President Akufo-Addo there, and he put it succinctly. If you emphasize prosperity, then you put yourself in a position where then we will probably have to tax you. And I've heard the Deputy Attorney General explain that soon they will impose those taxes. In fact, the GRA has already indicated that it's something that the government is seriously considering. So should churches be taxed, and in what form? Should government tax the tithe, the offerings, the pastor's income, or just the related for-profit ventures of the church? Connecting to discuss is Reverend Adai Mensah, founder and leader of Gospel Light International and a member of the National Association of Charismatic and Christian Churches. Thank you very much. I'm grateful that you joined us. I'm dying to hear your perspective on this conversation. Nana Kofi-Akwa is a blogger. He is a good friend of the show, obviously. People don't know, he's Joshua's brother as well. He's a spiritual father to many, sure as well. But he is a photographer of international repute, and he joins us in the studio on this all-important subject. Also in the studio is Peter William, a chartered accountant, certified business process outsourcing master trainer, and tax advocate. He has interest in church tax, church fraud, church governance, and he's written an article, a very interesting article, where he quotes both from the Bible and the law to back his position as far as this is concerned. And I'm dying to hear his thoughts on this. Peter, thank you for connecting here on Ghana Connect.
Thank you.
Now, Bishop Prince Benny would also join us in the studio. He's with the Concerned Clergy Association. I wonder what their concern is on this very important subject. We'll connect later on the phone with the president of the Christian Council, Reverend Dr. Agidi, and the General Superintendent of the Assemblies of God Church, Reverend Professor Paul Frimpong Manso. Remember, the Assemblies of God Church, they've already told the president that they are ready to pay the tax, so you should bring it on. We'll find out why they are so eager to do so. And then later, we'll find out how this plays out in countries like the UK and the USA. I want to hear from you. This is how you can get in touch.
Join us now on Twitter, hashtag Ghana Connect Live, Facebook, Joy 99.7 FM, or send us a WhatsApp on 0244 340 437, and we will call you back. Join the nation's biggest conversation now and connect to authority.
Okay, we'll start with the poll because this conversation has been happening for a while. We just thought we should test it and see where my panelists stand on the question, should the church pay tax? Enes.
Yes, we asked the question, should churches pay tax? You have to choose yes, they should. That's A, and B, no, they shouldn't. Now, we had 390 people connect with us on this poll. Out of that, 300, representing 77%, said yes, the churches should pay tax.
300 said yes, the churches should pay tax. 77%.
Yeah, and 90%, representing 23%, said no, the churches should not pay
tax. And if you read some of the comments on that poll, Yankson Kwabena says, back in the days, churches built schools, hospitals, and other social amenities. These are things that the government do with taxes. These days, that the churches don't do these things anymore. Maybe they can support small. However, since the church is made of individuals who may be paying income taxes, luxury car taxes, and utility taxes, that should lead to double taxation. These are just my thoughts. I stand to be corrected, though. Benjamin says they are already supposed, under the law, to be paying taxes. They are only exempt from tax on gifts and donations. And Luther says the president need to close antichrist churches because God will ask him why didn't he lead the process to both tax them and close them down. The question must be, should our religious bodies pay taxes? Then you broaden the conversation. Well, let's start with that question then. Reverend Adai Mensah, let me start with you. Should the church pay tax? You've heard the overwhelming majority, 300 in our poll, said yes, it should. Where do you stand on that debate?
Now, basically, church workers like pastors and other workers in the church is paying tax already. I think the public is... So
the pastor's income that he gets by virtue of him being the pastor is taxed by the state?
Yes, it's taxed by the state, And so it looks like the public are not well informed about what goes on in the church. Basically, the members that comes in to give offerings and tithe. Already they pay their taxes. So is that not going to be a double tax? Now, when you say the churches should pay tax, then we should stretch the argument. Then the mosque should pay tax. Then the chief palace also should pay tax. The shrines also, they must pay tax. If we are stretching the argument, it's not only the church that takes donations. You know, fetish praise, people go to them and they charge. In fact, with them, they even charge. And so if you're going to stretch the argument, because already the church, and that one falls within what Jesus says. If you read Mark 12:14-17, you know, that they asked Jesus about it. And he said, well, give to Caesar what is Caesar, and give to God what is God. And in fact, you look at Matthew 17:24-27. Jesus and his disciples pay personal tax. And also, reading the Bible, I cannot find anything like temple tax. The temple tax was individuals, you know, that one was instituted by Solomon, that they paid to support the construction of the temple. Apart from that, people are ignorant about what happens on in the church. You know, they don't know how many school fees, I mean, the things that the church are doing. And I must be honest, sometimes you hear this argument and people don't know. I mean, the churches may even sometimes, you know, come to the government for some help. The reason being that we support paying of school fees. You know, when people are sick, they fall on the church. And there are other charity purposes, I mean, that have been run by the church, you know. And so when people just look at the crowd, that this and that. And you know that years ago, just about a decade ago, the churches, when you import instruments, you don't pay duty tax. You don't pay duty on those things, including bars for the church. But these days, all those things have been taken off.
So when you import your drums, etc., you pay tax on that?
You pay tax. You pay tax. Anything. You know, we just bought a bus from Europe, and we paid almost 96,000. You know, a 52-seater bus. It's not a new one, used one. You know, so people actually out there are ignorant. You know, they are ignorant about the happenings of the church. Yes, you may look at the few ones who are flaunting their words here and there. Well, that's a subject for another discussion. But really,
it's a subject for this discussion. Let me bring the Kofi Akwa on this. What do you say to that? Especially on the way he ended the last bit.
It's good to be here, and I think that I agree with Reverend on a lot of things. First and foremost, I think that we are being misled. I think, first, let me say, pastors are like musicians. You know, there's the 1% that do very well and become superstars and show off. And so we see them in their Ferraris and Bugattis, and we assume that every pastor lives this way. But anybody who has actually been actively involved in church work can tell you emphatically that about 99% of pastors, I mean, people doing real work, not these crooks pretending to be, but people actually involved in church work are actually, they basically struggle to survive. I mean, they serve in communities where they are happy to. I mean, it's very, very difficult, and it is dangerous to look at the few who flaunt, the few who can afford to be on TV. I mean, any pastor who can actually afford to be on TV is doing quite well, or even have a radio program is already doing quite well. But they create a wrong picture. The average servant of God doesn't have it that good, and it's important for the public to understand that. But that aside, on the issue of taxing, I think that this government, I mean, in fact, governments in Africa are generally quite lazy about taxes. So what happens in every dispensation is that they look for the people who are already tax compliant, and then we take more tax from them. You know, so if in terms of taxation, we need to look at how to effectively implement and collect more tax from the citizenry. The other point I like to make is that if you look at the church as an organization, I feel that just in the UK they have the Charity Commission and all that. I think that a church that can put up a church facility that is worth about $1 million and has a road right in front of the church that has huge potholes and expects the government to come and fix that road has a problem. So yes, I agree that all the churches that genuinely make a lot of money should do their very best to also commit to social good. I think it is not fair when members of a church contribute to the building of a university and then the fees are so high their children cannot afford. We've lost that. The charity as the mission of the church in society is missing, and I think this is the spirit of the question.
Yeah.
The president can talk about the church paying tax because we see the opulence, we see the demand for $1 million, and the ease with which it is said. We hear preachers say, "Me and my great grandchildren, fourth generation, would never know poverty."
Yeah.
On what basis do you say that? And to think that, and this is the cycle of it. Most people who go to church, in fact, there is empirical evidence that the poorer a society is, the more religious they tend to be.
True.
So people will go to church because they can't afford the cure of cancer. So if they will sow a seed of 10 Ghana cedis and God will see that, it's totally a misappropriation of scripture, but that's another conversation. God will see their offering and heal them. The promises of divine power and divine healing that is made from the pulpits, that totally misleads. Basically, it is extortion of the people. These are, for me, even bigger issues. How do these preachers make these monies? If you look at the congregation and you see them in their masses, if you profile them, what living standard measure do they fit into? How do they live? And how come a preacher from Ghana can dip his hand into his pocket and buy a £500,000 vehicle and brag that, he can even buy 4 or 5 more of that?
Now,
so those are problematic.
And you raise an interesting point. So he gets that money, the $500,000 to buy that car,
Yes,
from the tithe and the offerings that the poor guys give.
But even more importantly, from the extortion. You see, we need to understand the exploitation of the poor and the vulnerable. How much does a well-qualified employee of JoyFM earn?
Yeah.
And this is the privilege. If you work at JoyFM, you are privileged.
You're supposed to be.
No, you are privileged. In this society, you are privileged. The average person earns about 500 Ghana, 600 Ghana, and then your child is sick. Your child is diagnosed with sickle cell, whatever. You can't afford a treatment. So then you will go the way of faith. You believe that, and then some pastor will advertise on TV that he's powerful, and you see people holding crutches, and you see the blind seeing. So because as a system we have failed our people. When people are supposed to go to the hospital, they go to the churches and they go to the imams, and then they go to the shrines. And they are being exploited terribly. So as a society,
so isn't that why?
Can you use the word? The term they are being exploited. When you use it in a general terms, I don't think it's right. We, the church, we agree that there are some few charlatans among us, just as we have among the police, we have among even the military, we have few bad nuts who really, and it's unfortunate that the media will focus on these ones. And what about those? Because, for instance, if you're a pastor and you have a church in Accra, you have some in villages everywhere, the pastor, you need to put somebody there. And maybe you're paying 500 a month. And at the end of the month, all his tithe is about 40. How do you balance the sheet? So when you use the word because in a sense, some of this faith work, it works. Healing. People get healed. That is there. We also have fake healers. There is no doubt about it. But when you use the whole thing in a general terms, that means an encouragement on all pastors. And a pastor suffering somewhere, working hard to raise this thing, and then it's like he's roped into that kind of bad knots. And to me, I believe that both the media and the general public sometimes don't know. Like the point I'm raising, you have maybe, let me say, 500 pastors. only about 10 in Accra churches here which are doing well, fine. And you have to pay those Accra. Somebody have to be at that village, to offer the services of a pastor to the person. And at the end of the day, at the end of the month, his total tithe is about 30 cedis, 50 cedis.
Why can't that person work and earn his own money and relying on the tithe?
No, this one, if a church as a mission, as a mission, the church have a mission. We have a mission. Jesus said we should preach at Jerusalem, Samaria, Judea, and all uttermost. You cannot say, for the fact that in the village there is no good, maybe there's no employment there, so the people there should just perish. No, it is about saving souls.
Evans, so since the Reverend interrupted me, can I finish?
Okay.
And then
I'll come back to Peter and Reverend.
So the Reverend has to understand that I grew up in church.
Yeah,
I am part of church. People call me pastor, and sometimes I'm embarrassed because of the happenings.
Yeah.
And right now I'm in a church where members don't keep tithe records.
Yeah.
So if you're sending a tithe
for a very good reason.
Yeah. You don't write your name on the envelope.
I'll come to your church.
If you come to my church and it is time for offering, we take only one offering, and there is an announcement before the offering that if you are here and this is your first time, we want you to know that you are under no obligation to put any money in the offering basket.
Okay.
But if you're a member of the church, we will encourage you to be faithful in your tithe and your offering. This announcement is made every single Sunday before offering. These are important because we are, and also we are a mission-oriented church. In other words, our mission as a church is to support missionaries all over.
In other words,
the
the primary reason why you do the offering and the tithe is to
support
do the mission.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
nothing else.
And also,
not to open a university.
No, and every single member of my church who serves and I served on my church's board for 10 years as a leader. I can tell you for a fact that every pastor, everybody in leadership works to make a living. So not a single one of us is on payroll. I have never been, and I'm saying this on radio, anybody from my church can call in, and I have never been paid a dime for 10 years of service in the church. Not a penny. So when I sit here and I talk about exploitation, it is real. I know it. I was part of many, many other churches. Yes, there are the good ones doing the work. But the exploitation, in fact, the things we take for granted, the threat that, the tithe, if you don't pay your tithe, God will curse you.
Yeah.
It is totally against New Testament doctrine. Yes, in the New Testament, one time somebody asked Jesus and he said, yes, do it, pay your tithe. He said it. But the concept of grace, we can get into all of that.
No, but we have to.
Are we turning this?
Yes.
No, it's part of this.
Are we turning this discussion into doctrine?
No, because if you listen to the president, it's important. If you listen to the president, he was talking about exploitation.
Yes.
He was talking about the flaunting
and
of wealth.
The church cannot deny the exploitation of the poor.
And the president was saying that is why you cannot question.
Listen,
do you have time to discuss the area is going?
No, but it's an important. We need to different church. Let me bring you in. I'll bring you Peter in shortly, but let me hear from Reverend.
Okay, now let me say.
First of all, do you support the thing that the churches should be taxed?
No, we are already paying tax.
Now, let me rephrase this. He said that a lot of the people who go to church have been exploited. The question is, if that is the case, and I think there's an admission that some of the religious leaders do exploit.
Oh yes, I mean
correct. Now the question is, if that is the case, isn't that why we should be taxing the tithe, the offerings, etc., so that the government can have money to help those poor guys who are in the church who are being exploited? I mean, this is an argument I've heard this week. So tax the offerings and all those things. Let us get more money into the national coffers so we can do free SHS for the woman in your church who is contributing his 1 CD to you every day, who you are not helping.
You see, that is a problem. What you have said is exactly the problem.
What is the problem with that?
The kind of analysis you have made is what is feeding into the public's mind that the church is getting some money that has to be taxed. Let me tell you.
Yes, but you're getting money that has to be taxed.
What you are saying means that we have to redefine what church is and make it a commercial entity.
But the churches are commercial entities now.
Coming.
They are not.
I'm coming.
Really?
They are not.
When the
political parties collect money,
when churches you finish. When the churches take
political parties make their money.
When the churches take the woman's 1 CD and use it to build a commercial university.
Okay.
When the churches take the one CD from the woman and use it to build a library, and they charge to go there and go and buy books, bookshop. All the churches have bookshop. They charge to go there. They take the money and they use it to do all the commercial things you do. Where do you get the money from? Isn't the offering in the church?
See, that is another
commercial.
That is another misconception you are throwing into the public. See, that is the problem. What the media is doing is the media is feeding the society with. Let me tell you something.
Tell me.
Every business the church owns is taxed.
Yeah, but where did you get the money to start that business?
That is the point. That's what I'm saying.
From the church, from the offerings.
What was the purpose of the money? Look, to
do God's work.
I'm coming.
Mission work.
Okay.
And you're using it to build commercial entities.
How do you wait? I'm coming.
And build businesses.
How do you send people to go and do God's work? Are you aware that is a university that translated the Bible from English to Twi and other things?
True.
So if the church has a university that is doing that, what's the problem with that? See, we need to understand what we are dealing with. Policies are formulated to solve a problem. All the problems we are saying that is happening in the church, and because of that, this policy has to come. None can be solved by this introduction of this policy. It can't solve it. Let me tell you, there's always a history. Before you touch anything or change anything, you have to find out its history.
True.
And the history was to make sure that the state doesn't get unduly interfere with the church activity, because then will undermine the freedom of worship. Because, for example, people talk about, okay, what about if the law is passed and a church, let's say about 50 churches are not able to pay their tax? By law, you have to close down the church.
True.
As a business entity. Can you imagine 100 churches closing in Accra because they can't pay tax? They are not thinking beyond what they are saying. That's what I'm saying. Most people who are talking about this tax thing are thinking little and talking a lot. And because of that, their thinking is not commensurate with what they are saying.
I think that is very insulting.
No.
Anybody,
you say most people.
Yes.
I say most people, but it can be minus you. I didn't say anybody.
It's not about me. I don't
the people I've heard. All the people I have heard.
Okay.
All the people,
I say some people.
No, okay.
I say most people.
Just like I said,
okay,
he said.
Most of the people I have heard. You understand?
So he generalized.
Yes, he generalized it. And you see,
when people generalize that churches are corrupt, they don't have problem. When we say that most people are heard, because right now the analysis that we are making here so far, it doesn't justify taxing the church on anything, because the church is already involved in that. Look, people are talking about building schools, building hospitals. Those days, the land were not as expensive as it is. This afternoon, I asked for a land, one plot at Hacho, and it is $30,000. How many churches can afford $30,000 to buy a plot and build a university, or build a school, or build a hospital? We have to be honest with the issue we are dealing with. You understand? It's not every church that can build a school or a clinic, but the work they are doing within. I am a founder of a church. My church is Leadership Chapel International. You can go there and ask for the books. If you see, you will see my salary inside. The church has more than 10 years. You understand? But
you don't take salary.
No, because where I want to take the church to, it has not gotten to a point where I even have to think of what I get from it. Because I need to make it strong so that I can start spreading out. I get what I'm saying. Most of the churches in Accra here, about 90% of churches in Accra are less than 100 people. 1 city, 2 city. Times how many times? People are underestimating the benefits and the impact churches are making on society, and are concentrating on the suit and the car of one man to judge a church. That shows that the society is not thinking well. That's the point I was making. Because see,
but that is the point he's making. That if you make that comment, it's unfair to society.
But the society that is attacking the church. So who should I refer to? The president is speaking on behalf of society. And I'm telling the president that the society is not looking, they don't know exactly what is going on. People stand outside the church and throw things into the church.
Okay.
And they want to tell the church what to do. And they are not coming to the church to come and see what's happening. We have serious challenges in the church, and people don't know. Some of the pastors, after Sunday, they go home empty.
Yeah, but that's you're doing God's work. Why should you complain about that? You should embrace that.
We should look at that one and clear all the taxes on the church.
But most pastors say,
you should look at those who are suffering and clear all
but
churches.
Pastors must suffer. That's what God said you should.
Pastors must suffer.
Yes.
So
then you're doing God's work.
You invited me to come here.
Yes.
If I'm staying at Amasama and I started working, I wouldn't have been here by this time.
Even they've forgotten about the people that the church is employing. You know, the church is offering employment to many people.
Okay.
And society will not.
Forgive me, I haven't heard from Peter. Then I know you have a lot to say. We'll connect to the Christian Council shortly on the line. But Peter, let me hear from you. You approached this from the legal angle, but also the biblical angle, correct? What's your thoughts on the altar you've had? We'll connect to the Christian Council shortly.
Okay. I think there should be a distinction between who a church is and then a man of God who works for the church.
Mm-hmm.
The church is a legal entity on its own. The man of God is an employee of the church.
Mm.
It's right that the man of God who works for the church pays taxes, right? But the church itself, in its operation, is not allowed to pay tax because they are registered as a non-governmental organization.
Yeah.
NGOs.
Yeah.
Now, it's true that the duties of the church, the main mission of the church, is to win souls, right? But there are some activities which the church engages in, which connotes to profit-making enterprises. For in my article, I listed three. I categorized the income that a church generates. The first one is the tithe and offering, of which is the normal operations of the church, the income they raise from the normal operations of the church. If an NGO is able to raise some revenue from its normal operations, it's not supposed to pay taxes on it. Now, the other revenue of a church is this consultation fee,
that we see some of the
anointing oil, and handkerchief, coconuts, etc., etc. These are profit-making enterprises of the church, and I believe they should pay taxes on it. It is not the duty of the church to have investments like operate a university, do other profit entering investment. If the church is able to do all those things, those entities are legal entities on its own, and they pay taxes. So as for that one, it is clear. But the issue of the church, for me, I think the main problem why I support that the churches should pay tax is the issue of corporate governance. You agree with me? 99.9% of churches in Ghana do not have any concrete laid down corporate governance structure.
Apart from the very established ones.
Apart from the very established one, like the Bishop's Church, Pentecost, Anglican,
the ICGC, so the very established, very well run.
The church becomes a family
business. I mean, one person runs it,
and he's able to control the finances and everything. It will interest you to know that the operating a church, or if you group the church as an industry, is the fastest growing industry in Ghana today, aside the politics.
Yeah. And I'll not be surprised. And the thing you make about corporate governance is such an important thing. In other words, accountability is missing.
Accountability is
so
zero.
The church, the monies that you collect on a Sunday, how do you account for it? If we categorize it as a charitable organization, and if you're comparing it to a proper charity, that is established and well run, they account for the money on a monthly, yearly, whatever basis regularly.
Yeah.
But when you have, it says like, you have most churches in Accra are like 100 people, and you have one person who is at the helm of it, deciding where the money goes. Then the question becomes, who is accounting for the monies that the church members are putting in by way of offering and tithe, etc. That's the question you're asking.
It's for the pastor.
Okay. let me bring in the president of the Christian Council, Reverend Dr. Agidi. Hello, Reverend. Thank you for your time here on Ghana Connect.
Thank you.
Where does the Christian Council stand on this debate that the president introduced last week on taxing the church?
Well, good evening again, and to your cherished listeners. The Christian Council, when the news broke up, we have not met, but we have various positions on it. But we when we meet, we'll articulate our position very clearly. But to start with, paying taxes is a religious responsibility to all Christians in general. And the church, when they ask the church to pay taxes, one of the things we are calling for is that they must define very well what do they mean, because we have been paying taxes all along. Our members, employees of the churches, they pay taxes. All the pastors, we deduct taxes at source to government. All institutions that are profit-making related to the church, they pay their taxes. Are they directing the issue to offerings and tithes and thanksgivings during Sunday? Well, the church is a development partner of government. When the schools were established by the church, before even some government came in, and these schools were built by money generated from free offering and then tithes from the congregations. And so if they are calling for taxing those offerings, then it may mean double taxation. And the social interventions that the government the churches are doing will not be forthcoming. It will be limited.
The present concern is that those social interventions in the recently have not been forthcoming, and that there's a focus on prosperity and on the pastors themselves and their self-wealth, and less emphasis on these social interventions that the church is really known for in the past.
Yeah, well, like as I heard some of your panelists are referring to, you see, the mainline churches, the well-established churches, they have regulations, they have constitutions that we abide by it, well, so that we pay salaries to our pastors, and they don't have to take more than is paid them. But when you refer to these up-and-coming one-man churches that the founder is the financial secretary, the treasurer, the purchasing officer, and everything, yes, they must investigate how their money is being used. And if there is a need for them to pay taxes, they have to pay. I agree with you with that. So there must be a proper investigation into the issues as to how churches use their money. And if there is need for tax paying, yes, why not? Because it is all about development of our own country.
And that's
we want to say that the church have been faithful in, especially the mainline churches, in using their income in development of their nation.
Okay, that's an interesting proposal. I'm grateful that you joined us, Reverend. That's the president of the Christian Council. He says that there should be an investigation first into how the churches use the monies that they get. And once that is done, that should then inform maybe targeting of the taxes.
Let me tell you something quickly before you go to anybody. Look, we have laws in Ghana. You cannot, negate your responsibility towards the law and keep passing laws. I don't understand this whole
Explain
idea.
what you mean.
What is church? What does the law say about church and tax? Is the church violating the law
I think the president's sense is that.
Where are the law enforcement agencies?
Okay.
Why do you want to pass a law? They want to apply a lazy approach.
I guess you agree with the Christian Council president who says investigate first, understand what is happening.
The problem
before you
they want to introduce this tax to solve. Education can solve it. Some of the pastors, I'm telling
educate the pastors or the members of the church.
Some of the pastors don't even know that selling things in the church is illegal. They don't even know. I'm telling you. If that's what I'm saying, they should apply. They don't know because some of them.
But does the Bible allow you to sell things in the church?
That's the point.
Didn't Jesus Christ whip people in the church because we're selling in the church?
That's what I'm telling you.
So even if you don't know the law, you don't know the Bible.
That's what I'm telling you. That if you come to church, some of them, I'm assuming somebody is holding a bottle of water. He said, if you have 2 cedis and the water is sold 1 cedi in town, so if you have 2 cedis, you bring it, I'm going to pray over it for you. That is how they are based on their faith. Okay, that is business.
Yes.
Good.
And it's an income.
So you
should tax it.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But if you said that you went to a church and you saw somebody holding a bottle of water and selling it 2 cedis and using it to pray for people, and so I'm government, let's pass law because I saw a church. That is wrong because a lot of churches don't even understand some of these things that people do. So you have to, like the president say, you investigate and you do education. If you want to sell something,
let me bring others in on that point about
bring it
education.
outside the church.
Do you support that? Because I'm doubting if you should educate the pastor on whether or not to sell stuff in the church.
You know, in Rwanda, Kagame has made a law where if you don't have a degree in theology, you cannot be a pastor. I don't agree with Kagame on that, but he's addressing a fundamental problem. You see, if you want to be a doctor, you spend at least 7 years in medical school. If you want to be a pastor, you just wake up one morning and say, I have a call. And nobody on earth can challenge you. And in fact, if you want to take any major decision in the church, if you are the pastor, you just have to come and say, God has told me that we should. And most people, touch not the Lord's anointed. Most people will just, cower and let you do what you have to do. So when he talks, when Bishop talks about education, I totally agree with him. But ignorance of the law is no excuse for, you understand? The culpability is not because, whose job is it to educate the pastor? Whose job is it to educate the citizen about taxation? Because I can tell you, I'm also a journalist, I can tell you for a fact that in Ghana, not everybody who doesn't pay their tax doesn't pay because they want to evade tax. There are a number of people, in fact, especially those in the sole proprietorship space, who have no idea how to keep books.
Okay.
So if you come to them and you say that, how do you keep your tax? They don't really understand it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that the IRS knows this. And a lot of them get exploited and get bullied. So in terms of education on taxes, we all need it.
But the question I'm asking, we are talking about two things, 2 books
Yes.
will guide this conversation.
Yes.
The legal book,
yes,
as passed by Parliament, etc.
Yes.
And then the biblical law.
Yes.
I'm asking, for the pastor who is selling stuff in the church,
yes,
must he be educated on the biblical law? Does the biblical law allow selling of water?
No, it doesn't.
That's the question I'm asking.
That is very clear. But here you make a mistake of assuming that the pastor knows the Bible. And that is a dangerous assumption.
Can I come in here?
Briefly, so that I can go on the phone.
Okay, what you are saying, basically, you can approach it from 2 angles. One is the Constitution. The Constitution says anybody can worship his God as he chooses. And that is one thing. So even if this is a pastor friend, he's doing something, and I say, oh, this is not what the Bible says. And he says, well, this is how he's been led to do it. I don't have, by the Constitution, I don't have the power. You see, and that's why some of these
in the things they sell in the church. You say that if they are led to do it.
Yes, by the Constitution.
You're not talking about the Bible here. You're talking about
okay. Yes, because one, the person is empowered by the Constitution of Ghana.
True.
That if he chooses to worship this microphone as his God,
he's allowed to.
He's allowed to. And that is the point I'm making here. The second one is education. The churches, by their own initiative, have been building Bible school training. But the question is, some of the people, maybe he's a stuck illiterate, and he just received a vision according to him. He claimed God spoke to him to start something. here again, and sometimes these are some of the difficulties you may have, but to put all together, that's my problem.
I get the point. I think we've circled back to that point. Let me connect quickly to the General Superintendent of the Assemblies of God Church, Reverend Professor Paul Frimpong Mansell. Reverend, thank you for your time here on Ghana Connect. Hello, Reverend.
Hello.
Yes, thank you for your time here on Ghana Connect.
Thank you, Sir Evans.
From what I hear, the Assemblies of God Church has no problem at all paying the taxes if government decides to impose it.
Thank you, Evans. That was the supposed headline I saw when I delivered my speech when the president came there. The answer is yes and no. Jesus himself said that we should render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's and unto God the things that are God's. He was talking about taxes. Caesar makes roads. Caesar employs civil servants. Caesar pays for education. Caesar makes good laws to protect the people of the land. Who is supposed to pay for that? So Jesus was saying we should render unto Caesar, means we should respect Caesar and recognize him and contribute to the welfare of our own security and lives. So tax paying is scriptural, is biblical, and any Christian who refuses to pay tax is lawless and has to face the law. But Assemblies of God interpretation, which is my belief, is that there is also the laws of the land that recognizes certain institutions as NGOs. In the UK, they say charitable organizations. So these institutions, by their definition, takes care of people, support the government in promoting the well-being of people. These institutions are non-taxable because they use their income to help to make people better, non-profit making institutions, and the church falls within that. So my position, or Assemblies of God position, is that when people have paid their tithes or offering or the normal income we say for the church, we don't have to pay tax on it, but we should rather use those monies to run the church and also use substantial part for the support and to help people to make their lives better. But those who are working in the church as pastors, like myself, and all those who work within the church, administrators, accountants, and everything, they have to register as workers and pay what we call PAYE. And I want to tell you, Evans, I have paid since I became a pastor from 1982 to date, and I will continue to pay. So all workers of all these institutions, they receive income. The other thing is that some churches, including Assemblies of God, we have other businesses like schools, clinics, some have restaurants and others. And I believe that all these agencies that are profit-making and are making money, they should pay taxes.
Okay. I'm grateful that you joined us. That is the General Superintendent of the Assemblies of God Church, Reverend Professor Paul Frimpong Mansell, explaining the position of the church on whether or not to pay taxes. And he's really broken it down in terms of what their position is. I'm grateful, Reverend, that you joined us. We'll come to the studio and wrap up shortly. But I want to go to the UK because UK is one of those countries where we often point to when it comes to how they're regulating the church there. And one of the most powerful churches that you hear a lot of got into trouble because the Charities Commission, they violated some of the codes there and they were probed quite strongly. Hit the headlines a few years back. Let's speak to the Charles Nketia with the Kingdom Mandate Church in UK. Hello, Charles.
Hi.
Hi, Charles, and thank you for connecting. Where in the UK are you connecting from?
From Manchester.
Okay, tell me. So straight to the point. How do you operate? How do you deal with the UK's Charities Commission in terms of how they regulate your activity, so that to ensure that you are actually doing charity work and not taking tithes and offerings to set up businesses that then becomes profitable?
Right. We have two ways. The first way is like a church will register at a business company. a company house as a business. And then that same church is registered at the Charity Commission. So at the end of the year, you have to submit all your account to to business, the part of the church that is doing business, submit to company house. And the part of the church that is solely charity will submit your charitable expenditures to Charity Commission. So they go through, and if they have any doubt, that is where they send people to come and investigate how the money was used. So the other side is, for example, our church is registered solely as a charity, so we are not registered in a company house. So at the end of every year, we have to submit our account, that is, whatever money that came into the church and how we spend it, we have to submit everything to the Charity Commission. And so if the Charity Commission have doubt that maybe whatever, some of the account that you have submitted was not used as charitable deeds, that is charitable expenditure, then they will question you.
Well, I think that is really helpful, Pastor Charles Nketia, and I'm grateful that you joined us with that brief intervention. He's with the Kingdom Mandate Church in the UK. Isn't that what we need in Ghana? I want to go around on this so that the churches are accountable to somebody. You are rendering an account at the end of the year so that somebody is checking whether you're actually using the tithe and the offerings for charitable work or not.
But that's exactly what I said, that we have a law that governs church and tax and tithe offering and all that. The state is...
But no church is accountable to anybody in terms of rendering an account in Ghana.
So that's what I'm saying, that we have law and we have law enforcement agencies.
Yeah, but we don't have a law that says that, then I stand to be corrected, that says that at the end of the year, your church, you should file your report to a certain commission that looks into it to see that whether Reverend Wood is using the churches, the people's money.
Commission. That's why I'm saying that this Ghana, this is not UK.
Yes.
The UK have commission, we have something else.
Well, what is that something else?
We deal with IRS.
Peter has an intervention. Peter, you've read the law on this?
There are enough laws to handle all these things. At the end of every year, the church, being a legal entity, is supposed to file its returns at the registrar general.
Okay.
Of its accounts, the income, the expenditure, everything, and they are supposed to also, if it's a profit making entity. Like they sell anointing oil and those stuff, they are supposed to also file a return at the GRA.
Okay.
For the profit they made on
those things. Okay.
Of which they are not doing.
So that's a key point. Reverend Wood, have you done that yet? Have you?
No, we don't sell anything.
But he said that even if you don't, you have to file
your returns
to Registrar General.
We don't do that. We have never filed our returns.
Yeah, but that's the point he's making, that you should.
Yes, and I'm telling you that it is when you make profit. We don't.
No, but he's saying that if you make profit, you file with the GRA.
We have never.
If you don't, and you are doing proper charity work, you still have to file. You have to send a report to.
We have never made profit. Like I'm saying that
I'm just saying that he's distinguished between what you do when you're making profit and what you do when you're simply operating as a charity. Correct? That one will go to the Registrar General's office. I'm asking whether you've done that.
No, that's what I'm saying.
No, okay. Let me go around the table and come and then wrap up. Yes.
Yes, I think that what I'd like to say is that I am Christian, publicly known Christian, and we're in a time when a lot of Christians are losing their faith. In fact, for this to become a conversation we have, where our president would have to talk about taxation, is because we see that the mission of the church seems to be misplaced. And I look forward to the day when people can get their faith back and know that if I go to a church, I'm not going to be exploited. I'm going for worship. And when people come around me as fellow Christians, they come because they care, not because of what they can get from me. It started with Americans. This whole prosperity gospel thing, it's totally taking us, in a direction that has been very, very detrimental.
Yeah.
So when people actually lay down their lives. Back then people left good jobs to become pastors, to serve. Today, anybody who has no education, nothing, walks barefooted, becomes a pastor, and next day they are millionaires and they can brag about having so much there. And that has to change. This for me is the spirit of the matter.
Oh, yeah, Reverend.
Yeah, basically coming back to what he's saying. Well, the church itself, I mean, we're working on some of these things. We see some of these charlatans and things like that. But it's something that have been there all these years.
True. I guess the question is, how do we fix it going forward?
That going forward...
Should we go the UK way and have a commission for you guys to check your accounts?
I mean, you talk of UK, for instance, when they go through this thing, sometimes the government can even give you some money to support
that is
your
if they find in your records that you're actually doing...
Well, if we have something like that, I believe it will bring some sanity to the system. But many churches do accounting, proper accounting, and this. But Ghana will keep on changing that law. During PNDC time, churches were asked to register. Another thing came in, and just after, and so the government also should really be up and doing. For instance, if you see a church, a pastor flaunting wealth in UK or in America, even if you're a businessman and you are flaunting your wealth, the tax man will come for you.
So I guess that's the point you're making, that the laws must work. If all the pastors flaunting wealth and boasting about the vehicles they've bought, the tax man go and look into it, and if there's something you can retrieve, do. I'm grateful that you all joined us. This is Ghana Connect. Connect again next week.